behind the peaceful splendor of the Midgar kingdom lies within a seedy underbelly of intrigue and corruption. For the sole goal of world domination, this unknown evil, known as the Cult of Diablos, has imposed their will and influence over all facets of society, corrupting its leaders and oppressing the innocents for their own benefit. For the longest time, they have remained unopposed. Any who dare defy them would meet a swift end, or worse, be controlled by the cult against their will. This, however, is now under threat when a new faction came to oppose them. They also work in the shadows. Instead of vying for power for their selfish ends, they arose to destroy the iron grip the cult has on the world. Only known as Shadow Garden, this new organization came out of nowhere and has disrupted the cult's activities, destroying key facilities and personnel. They have put in peril the cult's influential grip over ruling kingdoms such as the Kingdom of Midgar. This looming threat hovers over the cult and will continue to harass and cripple their grip over humanity. So what is Shadow Garden? What is its origins? Who are its members? Why are they fighting the Cult of Diablos? And where are they now? In this episode, we venture into how Shadow Garden came to be, and the power and influence they have at their disposal to thwart such a huge and highly influential faction like the Cult of Diablos. This is the story behind one man's shadow organization of justice. This is the story about the umbral hunters of shadows known as Shadow Garden. Shadow Garden's start began with a fateful encounter between a cursed being called the Possessed and stylish bandit slayer Sid Kajanu. The Possessed are horrid creatures suffering from a curse left by the demon Diablos before its death. They would suffer mutations within their body, creating cancerous growths and causing the affected area to deteriorate and rot. There was no known cure for this until Sid Kajanu encountered one. After one look, this boy figured out the root cause of the curse. He surmised that the possessed victims were experiencing an overcharge of mana in them. Their bodies were unable to contain such a huge amount of power within them that their bodies began breaking down. Thanks to Sid's multiple experiments to discover the cure, the first of Shadow Garden was relieved of the curse. The rotting tumors receded and revealed a young elf girl. Maintaining the roleplay he had going on, Sid introduced himself as Shadow and created a fabricated story on how he dispelled the elf's demonic curse. A curse left by the great demon Diablos after being defeated by the three heroes. Sid claimed that the elf was a descendant, hence why the curse affected her. He also told her that he was fighting the malevolent figures responsible for such evil, the Cult of Diablos, after looking at a liquor bottle. Sid might have thought this was just some make-believe tale he weaved, but he would remain oblivious to the reality. After being recruited to the fold, the elf, now known as Alpha, served as Shadow's liaison and went on a mission to recruit more of the heroes' descendants to strengthen their numbers, and to find a way to collect funds for their base of operations. She would single-handedly organize this. Eventually, it would grow strong enough to become a real thorn on the cult's side. And thus, Shadow Garden came to be. Shadow Garden came to grow even more after 6 more girls, cursed by possession, were recruited. Thanks to Shadow's miraculous healing, the mutation on their bodies were removed and their bodies restored back to normal. Grateful for such a feat, all pledged their allegiance to Shadow Garden. Under his tutelage, the 7 Shadows, the first of Shadow Garden, were trained in the arts of combat exercised by their great leader himself. Sid imparted to them all of his culminated knowledge on martial arts and swordsmanship into them, making them deathly effective fighters in close quarters combat. He also taught how to control their mana, effectively forming them into highly skilled spell swords, capable of melee combat and using magic to devastating effect. On top of that, they read up on subjects like business, economics, the arts, and literature. They eventually formed specialties, enabling each one of them to handle specific operations required for Shadow Garden to effectively function. In addition to that, Sid also imparted to them knowledge of his previous world, elevating them to greater heights. These girls would be known as the 7 Shadows, the elite and most powerful members of Shadow Garden. It was thanks to them being under Sid's mentorship they were this strong. Alpha, Shadow's second-in-command, handled the leadership role over Shadow Garden. Not only was she the strongest member, she had mana equal or even greater than Shadow himself. Trained under Shadow, her skill with the blade was top tier, capable of defeating opponents twice her size when she was just a young elf. Not only that, she was also a descendant of the mythical elf hero of legend who dealt a lethal blow on the demon Diablos. This would explain her high levels of mana and innate talent for magic. Over time, she'll turn into a devastating threat to those who fought against her. She was innately talented as well in the areas of management and leadership. Her proactive attitude was the only reason Shadow Garden grew the way it did, recruiting more members to the organization. Beta was the second elf recruited into Shadow Garden. Dedicated and loyal, Beta handled intelligence gathering and managed overall operations of Shadow Garden. Gifted with great powers of analysis, she was capable of compiling any data she comes in contact with and devise schemes and strategies accordingly. Despite having a delicate and busty figure, her combat prowess shouldn't be underestimated. While she wouldn't be as powerful as Alpha or the more combat-oriented Shadows, Beta could hold on her own in battle. Out in public, she posed as the popular book author, Natsume Kafka, renowned for many stories that became bestsellers upon release. This came about when Shadow told her tales from his previous world, which inspired the literary talent within Beta. Inspired by Shadow's stories, she took up the pen and utilized her clout and influence to reach out to the elites of the kingdom for intelligence and espionage. Gamma, the third elf Shadow Garden recruited, managed the organization's finances and logistics. She is also the director of the Mitsugoshi Company under the name Luna. This business was very lucrative and secured funding for Shadow Garden thanks to the products they offer, which were modern products from Shadow's previous world, recreated to this fantasy world. They mostly consisted of recreational goods which were highly lucrative for high-class elites, generating huge profits for the company, and in turn, maintained operations of Shadow Garden. As the company grew, it would compete against the cult's influence over the trading in the Midgar kingdom, igniting a flashpoint between who has monopoly over Midgar's commerce. Delta, a Beastkin girl, is the fourth member recruited into Shadow Garden. She possessed a distinctive personality characterized by her childlike demeanor, deep affection for her master, and a penchant for violence. Being a Beastkin, Delta adhered to the principle of following the strongest, pledging loyalty to Shadow due to his overwhelming power. As a loyal member of Shadow Garden, Delta relished combat, displaying merciless and brutal tendencies towards enemies, which would occasionally unnerve her master and comrades. While not proficient in casting spells, Delta excelled in physical enhancement. Despite her limited magical repertoire, she achieved superhuman strength comparable to Shadow, manipulating her custom slime bodysuit effortlessly with mana. Notably, Delta possesses an abundant supply of mana, suggesting a unique connection to magical energy. Had she harbored some self-control, she would have surpassed Alpha in terms of raw power. Epsilon was the fifth member of Shadow Garden. Her public persona, Chiron, was that of an award-winning pianist and composer who claimed authorship of numerous original songs. However, these compositions were, in fact, earth music taught to her by Shadow, enabling her to infiltrate influential circles through her famous concerts and formal gatherings. Casted out by her noble family due to having demonic possession, everything changed when she encountered Sid. Curing her of her curse, he gave her a new purpose in life, eventually falling in love with him. This manifested her insecurities about her slender figure, leading her to use her slime bodysuit to enhance her chest in an attempt to gain Shadow's attention. Ranked as the fifth strongest member alongside Beta, Epsilon excelled in magic control, earning her the title of Precision. Her talents also extended to spying and espionage, leveraging her status as a pianist, composer, and former noble to infiltrate aristocratic circles for intelligence gathering and covert operations. Zeta, formerly known as Lilim, was the sixth member to join Shadow Garden. As the head of exploration and espionage, she had founded a secret subfaction out of dissent for the organization's direction under Alpha, with the ultimate goal of making Shadow immortal. Head of intelligence as well, she had an incredible amount of autonomy within Shadow Garden. She had a natural gift of mastering any weapon she held. Her weaknesses were her fickle and obsessive tendencies. She got bored quickly, preventing her from fully mastering skills. Her hatred for the cult of Diablos was unparalleled among the Seven Shadows, driving her to extreme measures to achieve its destruction. She blamed the cult for obliterating her whole tribe in an attempt to silence her from exposing the cult's existence. She fully subscribed to the mindset of the end justifies the means, willing to cause collateral damage just to achieve her goals. Her reckless mindset may cause friction within Shadow Garden as two conflicting ideas for Shadow Garden's ultimate path would clash. Etta was the seventh member of Shadow Garden. She led the organization's research and development branch. Publicly known as Etta Lloyd Wright, Etta was a genius architect who received awards for her work based on scientific and mathematical principles taught by Shadow. Despite her slow-paced nature, attributed to horrible sleeping habits, Etta excelled in research. She utilized Shadow's wisdom to develop groundbreaking technologies for their world, including the instant camera and the automobile. Etta applied these innovations publicly through Mitsugoshi while equipping Shadow Garden with the best tech behind the scenes. Etta may be considered the second weakest among the 7 shadows, but her strength lay in her intelligence and her ungodly capabilities for invention. She played a crucial role in the group's technological advancements, resulting in the indirect technological boom within the kingdom of Midgar. These 7 exceptional women were the 7 pillars of Shadow Garden. It's due to them that the organization thrived. Despite being a target of an evil underground cult, it stood defiant and would threaten the cult's long reign it had enjoyed for decades. Over the course of Shadow Garden's growth, it would swell in numbers, creating the number division. These individuals were recruited by the 7 shadows but weren't personally trained by Shadow himself. They, however, were trained by the 7 shadows, making them competent and strong enough to contribute to Shadow Garden's operations. The 7 shadows may be powerful, but they couldn't be everywhere all at once. And to keep up with a huge monolithic titan like the Cult of Diablos, they would need the numbers. Comprising 600+ agents, they were the eyes and ears of Shadow Garden, feeding intelligence and maintaining optimal efficiency on Shadow Garden's multitude of operations. Even a huge corporation like Mitsugoshi would require hands for it to run smoothly and not succumb to corruptions from evil entities, each of them incorruptible and working together to see through the destruction of the Diablos cult. Notable agents of the numbers would be Lambda, a dark elf, whose very role is to train other recruits. She was responsible for thoroughly training new initiates to be effective shadow agents. Her method may be grueling and harsh, but it would ensure that the recruits had the skills necessary to survive their missions against the cult without any fear and doubt. Another one would be number 666, also known as the former Princess Rose Oriana. She was Sid's upperclassman in Midgar Academy. Due to a series of tragic events, her normal life as a noble was destroyed and would have been made the cult's puppet had she not received Shadow's blessing. This instilled her courage to face the odds and free herself from the cult's evil grasp. She joined Shadow Garden in the hopes of getting close to Shadow as well. In time, she would embark on a journey to seize control over the Midgar Kingdom's sovereignty from the eldritch clutches of the Diablos cult. Thanks to the myriad of actions done by Shadow Garden, the cult of Diablos' influence crumbled. The domination they enjoyed whittled away as Shadow Garden continued to capture key areas that kept their control over Midgar untouchable. The predators become prey, and Shadow Garden would stop at nothing to see the Diablos cult disintegrate. As Shadow Garden's influence grows, so too are the dangers. The Diablos cult couldn't stand idly by as Shadow Garden's reach encroached over their sphere of influence. More of their elite members, the Knights of Rounds, would have to step in, else their cult would be eradicated from history. Sid's story gets more and more complicated and hectic as the events between these 2 shadow organizations go head-to-head. Shadow Garden would face their greatest foes yet as the tension increasingly rises. They would fight against forces a lot stronger than they faced years prior, and the agents of Shadow Garden would be ready and waiting. Will Shadow Garden succeed in eradicating the world-dominating cult, or will this be an unending shadow war? Will the Midgar Kingdom see a new age, free from the clutches of the Diablos cult? Sadly, this will be a story for another time. So far, this has been the story of the shadows that hunt shadows. This has been the story of the Shadow's invisible hand known as Shadow Garden. Thank you for watching Isekai Dork. A quick reminder to click like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more Isekai lore and weapon breakdowns.